Christian. Hmm. Okay.
Okay, welcome everybody. We are ready for another fantastic learning experience. Mr. Shem learning from this week's Parsha and positioning ourselves best to be able to do what we need to do to make the Gil our reality. We're turning to what's happening this week in the calendar, what's happening this week in the Parsha, and we're looking for practical, relevant life messages to keep us powering forward. So what's happening this week in the calendar is very big. On a personal note, we're still in the middle of celebrating Sheva Brachas, excitement, family Simcha. We're going to mention that today, of all days in the whole year, Chav Gimel Sivan is a day that the Rebbe made a big deal out of. And that is, quoting from the Megillah, in which Esther and Mordechai are told by the king to be able to inscribe whatever they need on behalf of the Yiddish people, whatever is needed, they should be written and should be done so because Esther and Mordechai have written that that's what needs to take place. And the Rebbe encouraged us on Chav Gimel Sivan to do the same and to tell Hashem exactly what it is that we need with absolute confidence that if this is what we need, Hashem will make sure good things happen and the things that we need will certainly take place. And this is today. Today is the day we should ask Hashem, of course, for gesund, good health, for our families, for ourselves, for those we know, and for all the Yidden around the world, and especially in Eretz Yisrael, the safety. And more than that, not just to be healthy, to have menuchas hanefesh, to have atzlacha, to have all the brachas, Yeshuas, the shidduchim, the children, the nachas, and all the good harchava, the peace of mind, the peace of heart, and of course, most importantly, to be able to see the fulfillment of our life purpose, to see the Geula take of Miyad. And that's today we're asking Hashem, we're telling Hashem on behalf of ourselves and those around us, Chav Gimel Sivan is today. You should be rich in every sense of the word. You should be rich in money and more importantly in health. You should be rich in health. You should be rich in nachas and all the good things that you do should be matzliach, b'toiva, nirva, nigla. That's one big thing that's happening this week. In addition to that, this coming Shabbos is a big Shabbos on multiple accounts. It's Shabbos Shlach, but it's also Shabbos Mevarchim of Chodesh Tammuz. It's the Shabbos Mevarchim, the Mevarchim that comes from the month that has in it the Matan Torah, the third of the 3 months build up from leaving Mitzrayim to working through the Yom Niyar and to be coming to the level of Matan Torah, which is this month. We have this month gives a bracha to the month of Tammuz, which has in it some major highlights, including not less than Gimel Tammuz, and of course Yud Beis Tammuz, Yud Gimel Tammuz, big days in the calendar, which we'll bring about as we get closer. But this week being Shabbos and Mevarchim is a big day. It's a week that carries brachas. It happens to be that in recent history, this Shabbos became also a double special day because it is Chav Ches Sivan. Chav Ches Sivan is the day in which the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin were saved from Europe and made it safely to the shores of the United States of America. And it was a day, a big turning point in the development of Chabad Lubavitch in the United States of America and the southern in this side of the world, if you like. Because the Western world didn't have a very strong presence before the war of Shomrei Torah mitzvahs, people who lived by Torah mitzvahs through and through. And although people came across to America, it was a very difficult uphill battle to make it workable, inviting, and easy to or successful to be able to support people in the service of Hashem in the real world. And when the Frierdiker Rebbe arrived, he went immediately to great efforts to try and bring the Rebbe and Rebbetzin Chaim Mashka out of Europe. And from the minute the Rebbe arrived here into the United States of America, onto this side of the world, to the western side, the Rebbe was immediately roped into lots and lots of communal responsibilities, including Merkez Linyon Chinuch and other Kahas was one of the things the Rebbe took on, and Machne Yisrael. But these things the Rebbe personally was responsible for, in addition to supporting everything else that was going on at the time in Lubavitch in America. So Chav Chasidim was a big day on the Rebbe's calendar, the day that the Rebbe and the Rebbe made it to safety. And for many years, it wasn't a spoken thing. And eventually later, the Rebbe took it on and accepted to make a big deal out of Chav Chasidim. And it's a day that we actually have a mimer that was handed out on Chav Chasidim. So it's a big deal. And it's a day of breaking away from hardships and leaning into new places, new goals, and also new challenges. And the Rebbe teaches us how we can continue storming forward even when things don't look easy. But that's what's going on the calendar between today, Chaf Gimel, Sivan, the day we tell Hashem what we need, Shabbos Mevarchim. And in addition to that, of course, we have Chaf Chasivan on Shabbos. And by the time we get to this time next week, it'll already be Rosh Chodesh, and we'll bring about that next week. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the Parsha. A little heads up that we're going to do an abridged shir today. At least that's the aim, because I'm supposed to be downstairs celebrating with a chassan and kala. But Torah learning is also part of the schos for Moshe and Sarah, and all other Yiddish people are celebrating their schos. The simcha should be contagious. Imagine that. Imagine, that'd be great. Where simchas just like, it just gets so catchy. And more people have simchas. We can have more of that. I think we could all agree it'd be a great bracha. So, what's going on this week in the Parsha is Parshas Shlach Lecha. Shlach Lecha, the very words, the translation of the actual name of the Parsha is to be sent and sent away. In the context of the Parsha is Moshe Rabbeinu sending the spies. And they're going to go away from the encampment of the Jewish people, the protection of the clouds, and they're going to go in a reconnaissance mission out to across the border into enemy territory. And there they're going to scout out the land of Eretz Yisrael. And the second word in the Parashah Shlach Lecha, as Rashi points out, Lecha L'daitcha, as Moshe Rabbeinu was told by Hashem, and Rashi brings it in the first Rashi, you can send your spies. Ani eini mitzava oischa. I'm allowing you to do it. I'm not telling you to do it. And if you want to do it, it's up to you to send the spies. Now, if we stop right here for a moment, those of us who remember the story know everyone loves a spy story, and it gets really exciting, and they're out there. The problem is the end of the story has a very sour ending, and it seems like a spy story gone wrong. Not because they get caught, or not because the mission fails, but because the aftermath of that mission fails, in which the Yiddish people who are supposed to be encouraged to go forward into Eretz Yisrael come back. Oh, sorry, the result is that they go exactly the opposite way. And the masses turn against Hashem and Moshe, and they say, we don't want to go. That doesn't sound like a great spy story. It doesn't sound like a great ending to Moshe Rabbeinu's attempt. When Hashem says, Shlach Lecha, on your own initiative, and it goes pear-shaped, it doesn't look like it's something to be celebrated. And nonetheless, the Rebbe makes a big deal out of emphasizing that actually Moshe Rabbeinu's mission did not fail. Moshe Rabbeinu's mission was an absolute success. The aftermath was a very tall price to pay, but that doesn't take away from the success of Moshe Rabbeinu's mission. One of the ways we see that is that later on, 40 years later, when the Yiddish people are about to go into Eretz Yisrael, they again send a spy mission, but this time Yeshua sends Kalev and Pinchas, and they barely get into the land of Eretz Yisrael. They don't have to scout out up and down the country. And the reason is because that information has already been attained. When? In Moshe Rabbeinu's mission. So there's success right there. More importantly, Shlach Lecha carries within it a very important message. And Moshe Rabbeinu hears that, jumps on it, and teaches this to us in this parsha, and that is that when we have an opportunity, a responsibility, and we are told by Hashem, you don't have to get this one right, you have to do it you. Don't aim for perfection. Don't aim to make sure this is perfect. Aim to make sure that this is really a personal investment. The success of that mission is not measured by how perfect it was. The success of that mission is how much human investment was brought in, how much of the person was expressed in this mission? How much is it mine? How much am I invested into it? Don't measure by the bottom line, because this is not a mission about bottom line. Bottom line, you look for perfection, you find the most highly statistical, realistic method. But that's not what we're looking for here. Shlach lecha. Send and make sure that the people who are going to be humans. Make sure they're going to be people who are going to invest their own faculties into it. Of course, channel it, put safeguarding measures into place, which we will learn about. But the key to this success, the measure to this success, is to understand that the human investment is so precious to Hashem. And this is what we learn from the sixth parsha. Not so much to measure about the bottom line of what it looks like, what it's comparable to, but to notice how much the human minds were borrowed in this week's Sedra, were invested. And this is very important for us to notice. And there's a quote in the Hayom Yom that says that it's better when one is led by the hand, but it's more precious when one figures it out on their own. I'm just going to say there's one camera on, and I'm loving the fact that instead of going to the store and buying a ready-made scarf, your own investment. It's fantastic. That's where it's really precious. Am I right?
Mm.
Yes.
Yes.
Claire, I think that is the muscle exactly that we needed. Thank you. Yes. When it's finished, I'd love to see it.
It's a baby hat for the neonates.
Oh, wow. That's so nice.
And I've done some little hearts for the baby basics. So, yes, I hope you don't mind. It helps me to concentrate.
Absolutely. And I want to say that that's exactly what we're talking about here. Is preciousness a word? Preciousness? Now it is.
Mm.
Now it's a word. Well, the preciousness of the personal investment in making it by hand and making it with care and making it with investment is exactly what we're talking about. And this is the lesson we want to take. So, Shkoyach Claire, keep it up. As we were saying, Shlach lecha starts off with the spies being sent. And the opening of the story is that the Yiddish people have not even been out of Egypt 2 years, just over a year. We've finally moved away from the Mount of Sinai on the 20th of Sivan, which, by the way, was last week in our calendar. On the 29th day of Sivan, which will be this coming Sunday, is the anniversary when the Yiddish people are so close to Eretz Yisrael. Kadosh Barnea is one mountain top away from crossing over into Eretz Yisrael. And we've moved very fast from when we left Har Sinai. We've got the Torah. We already have the Mishkan, the house of Hashem. We're now ready, cruising straight forward into Eretz Yisrael. Actually, last week we also mentioned we had the Carbon Pesach. At this point, the Yiddish people are ready, the green light and go. But questions are being asked. Who says that it's worth the effort? That's the question being asked. It's not a great question, considering that just less than 2 years earlier, we were slaves in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. And considering that Hashem has quite a track record. And if he says to us, he's taking us to a land flowing with milk and honey, we should really have relied on that. But as we said, human minds are part of the equation. Human hearts have to be explained, won over, and bought in. This isn't going to be an effort of top down. This is a bottom up. And therefore Moshe Rabbeinu says, you know what? I'd rather take the risk and get people to be personally connected, a real buy-in to the vision and to the mission. We're going to send people, representatives from each of the tribes, who will personally, eyes on the ground, feet on the ground, and actually see and witness what type of land it is, come back and talk each tribe their own language. Get someone who you trust, your family, someone who's in your team, 12 teams, and each one of you will have a rep who will actually go into the land and see with their own eyes and come back and actually tell you, I witness what they've seen, and then you'll start to buy in. And when you buy in, the connection and the investment will be on the level that we're looking for. And this is where Hashem says, look, it's bottom up. This is not a top-down instruction. It also carries the risk that comes with it. But Moshe Rabbeinu nominates 12 of the top men all of Eretz Yisrael, one from each tribe, people who would be loyal to Hashem, to the mission, and to the people who are sending them, so that they can come back and talk to the people in languages that they understood. And as they're nominated, they gather together, and Moshe Rabbeinu notices that something is right, but something else seems not right. And therefore, he davens for Yeshua and actually adds a letter to Yeshua's name, because before this story, Yeshua was nominated for Ephraim. His name was Hoshea, but because he was Moshe's closest student and he was already nominated as the successor, he would become the successor to Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu davens for him by adding a letter to his name, changing the word Hoshea to Yehoshua, which would be a combination, a composite of two words, Ka, Yud Ke, Hashem's name, Hoshea, Ka, Shua, Hashem will help you. Hashem will save you and protect you from this vision that seems to be going pear-shaped from the Meraglim, from the spies. Kalev, who was also one of the 12 spies, when they make it into Eretz Yisrael, they cross the border, they go in and they spy on the land, they're scouting up and down, crisscrossing the country for 40 days and 40 nights. At one point, Kalev sneaks away and does a known little quick visit to Ma'aras HaMachpelah, to Davin in Hebron, where Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are buried. And what is he davening for? That Hashem should save him, that he shouldn't make any mistakes on this really important mission. And by the way, this becomes one of the precedents, one of the Torah sources of going to daven, Al-Kivri Tzadikim, the gravesites of the righteous people who have passed away, which is a very important part of Yiddishkeit, connecting to Hashem and asking Tzadikim to daven on our behalf as well. They come back, and unfortunately, although Moshe Rabbeinu tells them to bring the fruit of the land in order to demonstrate how great the land is, they bring the fruit back from the land with a very different intention. And their intention is to make it so scary, to convince the Yidden never to go into Eretz Yisrael, and they do that very well. They come back and say the land is brilliant. But, one word, Ephes. However, and then it all goes downhill from there. However, it's so good, it's invincible. There's no way we can make it. We'll never be able to overcome them. They are so powerful. They are so ferociously strong. There's no way we're going to be able to do it. We're better off not even trying and instead staying here. Of course, the Hasidic spin is that they were very spiritually minded. They weren't interested in going away from the bubble of living in a sheltered environment where the clouds of glory did their laundry and food fell from heaven, and they didn't have to worry about water, and everything was great. They spent and learned Torah all day. It sounds like a little kid at home. And they were too afraid to grow up and to go out into the big wide world and do what they were born to do. And therefore they insisted, let's stay right here in the desert. Let's stay close to the Mishkan. Let's not live a fully integrated life in the real world. And that was a big mistake. Kalev attempted to quieten the people and to turn them around, and of course, vote of confidence, whatever Moshe said would be successful, but he was unable to turn the tide. It was 2 against 10. And besides, complainers can always make more noise than the people who support. And therefore, the people complained and said, we wish we returned to Mitzrayim. And Hashem was very unhappy, and he decreed right then and there, first of all, the spies passed away, and also all the Yidden who had been of that age, of draftable age, would pass away, would perish in the desert, and it would take 40 years. The Edom would wander around 1 year for each day of the spies touring of the land, and only after 40 years, when an entire generation had passed, it would be their children, who they had supposedly been so worried would be under threat. It would be those children who would grow up and be the ones to actually go into Eretz Yisrael and go up. There were a group of determined people who, the moment they hear Moshe Rabbeinu rebuke them for the lack of faith and how inappropriate their reaction was, they right away realized their mistake. What are we talking about? Hashem can't save us? He took it out of Mitzrayim. He split the sea for us. What does that even mean? Of course we can go. And they immediately turned around to Moshe and said, you know, Moshe, we made a mistake. We're ready to go right now. Change your plan. And Moshe's like, it's too late. Now Hashem is telling you to stay out here. Don't go. But they insisted. And this small group of soldiers decided to go anyhow. And Moshe Rabbeinu told them, if you don't have Hashem's brachas, even with the best intentions, it's dangerous. And unfortunately, he was very right. They tried to go up. And unfortunately for them, the Amalek came and the Canaanim came and literally decimated all of them. Parshah killed them out. And they didn't make it very far. The end of the Parsha then shifts to the halachas of the meal offerings, the minchas, also the wine and the oil offerings that are given in the Mesa Mikdash, as well as the challah, the mitzvah that would be taken every time you make a dough. There's a mitzvah to do hafrashas challah, separating a piece of dough called challah, which we name our challahs after that little piece of the dough that's donated to the kohen. And that mitzvah would only begin years later. Meaning when they made a dough, if they made a dough in the desert, they would not do hafrashas challah. But the mitzvah starts off by saying, when you get into the Holy Land of Eretz Yisrael, you will have this mitzvah. And one of the reasons why this mitzvah is given to them now is because it was a pick-me-up. The Yidden had been told that they weren't going to go into Eretz Yisrael. And that could have easily made them feel total despair. So to pick them up, Moshe Rabbeinu teaches them a mitzvah that will only apply when they make it into the Holy Land of Eretz Yisrael, and that would remind them, don't worry, there's a mitzvah coming that is only for Eretz Yisrael, and you can be sure that you will make it in Eretz Yisrael, if not you, but your families and your children, and therefore there's still hope. And that was the mitzvah of Chal that was bringing to them. Then we have the story of the man who violates Shabbos, and he gathers sticks and kosher tzeitzim, which in itself is a fascinating story, what his intentions were. The bottom line is that he broke Shabbos. And the Yiddish people didn't know what the punishment exactly would be for the punishment of Shabbos, and therefore they brought him into prison. And in this week's Parshah, we learn that there's actually a capital sin to break Shabbos, and there's a death penalty for somebody who desecrates Shabbos when it's with Edom and Hasra, and that's the end in this week's Parshah. But the end of the Parshah is one of the stories that we read every single day. It's the mitzvah that Hashem gives us, that if a man has a square piece of clothing or a rectangular piece of clothing that has 4 corners on it, it must have tzitzis, fringe strings that are on the 4 corners with a tchela string on each corner. And it's not a mitzvah to have to wear a clothing that has 4 corners. The Rabbanan did enact that, but it does say that if we happen to have a piece of clothing that does have 4 corners, it should have 4 tzitzis on its 4 corners. And the end of that Sedra, and the end of that Parsha mentions that it is a reminder that we left Mitzrayim, and this is why we read the Parsha of Vayomer every morning and every night to remind us of leaving Mitzrayim daily, which in itself is a mitzvah. This is quite a loaded Parsha Shlach, and it's in this week's Parsha, as we just read, there are many big points. We're going to choose one. The title for this week's Parsha, this week's practical and nice messages, from honest scouts to sinister spies. And the point of the discussion is going to be that Moshe Rabbeinu chooses top men. Somehow, these top men ended up making such a terrible mistake that costed them their lives, that costed an entire generation the inability to do what Hashem had taken on Mitzrayim to do, and that is to go to Eretz Yisrael. Big mistake. And we go down in history as people who were terrible, very sinister in their spying. And the question is, what changed? Not just what changed, how did it change, and how do we make sure it doesn't happen again? So, the question for discussion is, I'm not going to stay too long, I'm not sure how this is worded. When a good person takes a bad turn after a traumatic event, what do you think is really happening beneath the surface? Is it usually a moment of sudden collapse or the result of a small and unnoticed change over time? And how can we tell the difference? We're asking ourselves, is there a way to notice when something is slowly slipping down the slippery slope? Or do these sorts of traumas and calamities take place suddenly? And the suggestion is going to be that the calamity, the real serious problem, could happen totally by surprise. However, it only happens when the foundations are worn away. And the wearing down of the foundations is a gradual process. And that process has a starting point that can be identifiable. The only thing is that if you don't have your eyes open for a small minor change, it's very easy to miss and not notice that it's an issue. And what we're learning is that by noticing the small, minor, little tiny problem, even though it's not become a big deal, and arguably it's okay, but to be able to have the foresight to recognize that this is a red flag already now. And the red flag needs to be worked on, not because it's an emergency, but because it's very important. It's very important. And that's what we're going to focus on. We're going to talk about sometimes noticing small, tiny, little things that could easily be argued, what's wrong? So what? What's the big deal? But somebody who learns this week's Parsha, says the Rebbe, notice how Moshe Rabbeinu teaches us in Parshah Shlach to watch out for small, minor changes that you can't do anything about yet openly, but if you're smart, if you care, if you're invested, if there's a bottom-up approach, if there's a feeling of where I feel responsible to make good things happen, so then this is exactly where we want to step in, and it's right then that we start doing the important things before it becomes urgent. Okay, here's the story. Moshe selected the leaders of each tribe to scout the land of Canaan, as we said, right? So who's he choosing? He's not choosing any volunteer who says, yeah, I'll go. He's looking for people who can fit the bill, who will do a good job, a fine job, both in their responsibility to Hashem, the mission, and of course to the people who are sending them. They'll come back and be able to talk to the people in a way that they will understand. So let's read it inside. Vayishlach Osam Moshe, and Moshe sent them from the wilderness, from the midbar of Paran, at Hashem's instruction. They were all men, heads of the children of Israel. Kulam Anoshim, they were all men, heads of the children of Israel. Roshei B'nei Yisrael, they were top people. Says Rashi. Kulam Anoshim, they were all men. I mean, you read the names, it's pretty much clear. If you have so-and-so, the son of so-and-so, he's pretty much a man. And you've got 12 of them, then there's 12 men. Fine, Kulam Anoshim. What does that tell us even? I mean, you would assume anyhow, if you go on a reconnaissance mission, the Yiddish army is going to choose men. Why does the pasuk say and specify these were all men? When the Torah employs the word men, it denotes people of prestige. They're not just ish and oish. These are people of kulam anoshim. These are prestigious people. At that point in time, says Rashi, oisashah ksherim hayu. They were all morally upright. Important foundation. I think this is kind of assumed to be the case anyhow. I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu is going to choose upright people. We want to say, don't assume anything. Read it in the verse. It's right there. The word says kulam anoshim. He chose the most important people. Rashi spells it out, and it's very clear that Moshe has chosen top guys. Okay. So why does the Torah stress that these were men? And the answer is the word men is used here to show that they were not just people, they were good people. Fine. Here comes the question. Eidosh Moshe anoshim. The verse later on says, these are the names of the men Moshe sent to scout the land. And Moshe called Hoshea ben Nun Yehoshua. Moshe Rabbeinu changes Hoshea's name and renames him as Yehoshua. Now, as he said, he only adds one letter, but it changes the name. It also changes the meaning of the name, because now the new name is a composite of Ka, Shua, Hashem will help you. Okay, says Rashi exactly this. Moshe called Hoshea Yehoshua. He prayed for him. What did he pray? Hashem Yoshiacha. May God save you. Who's he need to be saved from? From the council of the spies. Me'atzas meraglim. I'm going to ask you to notice that in this Rashi has actually named these people as spies. Meraglim. Now, that seems obvious, but actually I'm going to say, I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but if you read through the entire Parsha, the whole story, the word meraglim is not used in the Parsha. They're not called spies in the Parsha. But Rashi calls them spies. Okay? We're going to talk about that more, but I'm asking you to notice that Rashi actually calls them here. Hashem is saving Yehoshua from the council of the spies, me'atzas meraglim. And here is when we talk about the spies, in the spy story, we're borrowing Rashi's terminology, where he calls these people who were scouts, he calls them spies. But let's talk about Hoshea and Yeshua. As we just explained, Hoshea means save. Yeshua means God saves. Moshe changed Yeshua's name to pray that Hashem protect him from the spies. Okay, they're called good men, yet Moshe's prayer from Yeshua hints that he needs a prayer. And he needs to be saved from these good guys. Why does he need to be saved from the good guys? Clearly, something was already starting to go wrong. Notice, Moshe Rabbeinu is davening for Yeshua to be saved from the spies. They haven't even gone yet. And already Moshe is davening that Yeshua be saved from the spies. The story continues, and they went and came to Moshe and to Aaron. They've been up to Israel, they've crossed the land, they've come back, and now they come back to Moshe and to Aaron, to all the congregation of children of Israel. And the Torah gives a detailed description of the journey. And it says, and they went and they returned. So Rashi asks, why does it say they went and they came? Vayelchu vayavayu. Says Rashi, actually, there's a reason why the Torah, after they come back, says they went and they returned. What is the point of the redundant and they went? They went and they came. Why does the Torah say and they went? To compare their departure to their arrival. As they arrived with wicked counsel, so did they depart with wicked counsel. Now Rashi is really making it hard for us, because Rashi is now at the end of the story, when they come back with all sorts of bad reports, really ripping apart the Yiddish people's desire to go up to Israel, which was an instruction from Hashem. And these spies are coming back and convincing them, don't go, don't do what you're supposed to do. But Rashi somehow notices an extra word and says it's telling you something, not only about what they came back with, but actually, before they even set out on their mission, they already went with bad intentions. This is going to be problematic to us. It says, and they went to emphasize their mindset at the start of the journey. And this is going to be fascinating, because now somehow we don't have good men here. We have people who go out with bad intentions and come back and actually carry out the bad plans. It turns out we have three stages in their moral decline. They start out at fully kosher because they're nominated by Moshe, and the pasuk actually says the word anoshim. They were prestigious men. Then number two, before they leave, sometime before they actually leave, they developed counsel of the spies that need to be protected from. Moshe prays it should be spared from the counsel of the spies. Clearly a not good counsel, a not good idea. And then of course, when they get back, they develop a wicked counsel when leaving and return with the same mindset. So even before they leave, even before they go out, there are three steps. Great people, developing counsel of the spies that is worrying, to a wicked counsel before they leave, which is comparable to a wicked counsel they came back with. And this is what we're going to talk about. Question is, if the spies started out as good men and later became wicked, what happened in between that caused Moshe to pray for them? Before we flick the slide, any suggestions of what the answer might be?
They were scared.
Okay, so before they left,
they were
they got
princes.
scared.
They were princes to be sent out. They were very upright people, but they were scared, and they knew that what they came back with would change their whole life, and their life up to them had been looked after by Hashem, and they knew that this was going to be a changing point, that things were going to be different, and maybe they were a little comfortable in how they would live, but I think they were scared.
Very good. And are we saying they're scared of change, or more specifically, this particular change, which they knew would make it more self-responsible?
Yeah, they were scared of that, but they were also scared when they got there that everything was very big, and they were even scared of the size of things, of people. It was all too much, and they came back and they were completely negative, apart from Yahashua and Caleb.
Correct. So if you think of the immigrants who came from Europe and they came to all of a sudden to New York City and everything was big, busy, bustling, how unsettling that would be, and how small a person could feel, incompetent, even if they were maybe even much more talented than many other people around. But there's feeling of of being so inferior, so being so worried could make
As-
people scared.
mm,
We're going to say that they had that feeling already somehow, even before they set out on their mission. And the
yes.
wicked counsel they came back with matched their mindset before they had left.
Mm,
So the fear factor was there already earlier. And we're going to say that actually, besides for a fear factor, which is true, you're talking about the most prestigious of the Yiddish men. We're going to learn there's another element, perhaps that drove the fear, or maybe aside for the fear, there's something else that took place. And it was that Moshe noticed, which is why he realized this isn't great. I'm not pulling the plug on the mission, but I am going to daven that Yeshua stays safe from this. So it
mm.
wasn't terrible. It wasn't an emergency. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't clearly a problem. But if you had sharp eyes, if you were very focused on what needs to be done, like Moshe was, he would notice that this was not a healthy perspective and not a healthy
Maybe
direction.
maybe it's how people feel nowadays as well, Jewish people. There's fear, and
Yeah,
it's not how we felt. Even the immigrants that came over wanted to do something. They want to make things better. They laid everything down. They made a life for themselves and for us. We've come so far, and we go out and we're frightened people.
right.
It is not the same nowadays as it was. That's that kind of fear, not knowing exactly where you
Yeah.
stand.
Correct. I mean, a lot of the
Sorry.
stories that we hear today of people in the 50s and 60s are the stories that end up with success. And it's
Yeah,
probably fair to say that for every success story, there were many stories of people who never made it that far
yeah.
and lived with that fear, and their names didn't come to many of the books.
Mm.
And it was probably a very, very strong fear. I mean, it's hard to imagine what it would be like to pick oneself up after seeing such devastation and everything that they knew from the Hain, and then being brought to a brand new country where it was rough and tough and cutthroat. I mean, even in this country, people who made it to the UK, often by mistake, they thought they were in America, and the
Yeah,
captain threw them off the boat. I mean, there was some of the stories are really sad. But
yeah.
like you said, they managed to pick themselves up. And I'm
Mm.
sure and confident that we are also picking ourselves up. But yes, today is Chof Gimel 7, and we're telling Hashem we need more. We need people to feel safe. We need people to be safe. We need good news. We need Hatzlacha. We need bracha and all the good things. But let's talk a little
Amen.
bit about how the Sikha takes us from here. Says the Sikha, they were first called scouts. And Rashi switches the term from scouts to spies. The same word that's used earlier in the Torah, the word meraglim, has been used way back when in Sefer Bereshis, when the Shvatim, the brothers of Yosef, come down to Mitzrayim to buy food. And Yosef recognizes them and he accuses them of coming down to Egypt as meraglim, spies. And that's what Yosef uses when he accuses the brothers. He says he accuses them. What's the accusation? You guys are spies. Yosef says to them, you are spies. Leroy says, you have come to see the nakedness of the land. You're looking to see where the weakest points are. Exploit the land. People who commit espionage sustain double lives. He or she initiates a clandestine second identity. From that time on, a separation must be maintained between this person's secret spy identity with its clandestine activities and the non-spy public self. The covert activities inescapably exert a powerful influence on the person's overt life. They necessitate ongoing efforts at concealment, compartmentalization, and deception of those not witting of the espionage, which includes almost everyone in the spy's life. Effectively, being accused of being a spy means that a person has to be creating a cover story all day, every day. In other words, they're living a lie. That's what a spy story is. To be able to come and see the weakest part of the land, the spy comes to uncover the nation's secrets. And to do this, the spy must be sneaky and hide their identity. Hiding one's identity means that one's living an untruth. Living an untruth is not for a good Jewish boy and girl. Hiding one's identity is not what we look forward to do. And this is what the brothers respond to Yosef when they hear that they've been accused of being spies, of living a lie. They immediately say back, notice what they say to Yosef. They said to him, "No, my master, your servants came to buy food. We're not spies. But more importantly, we are all sons of one man. We are honest. Your servants are not spies." The opposite of being a spy is being honest. Wow. This is fascinating. So when Yosef tells the brothers that you are spies, it hurts them to be called a spy. We're not spies. To be called a spy is to be called somebody who's being dishonest, who's putting on a facade, who's running around with a cover story. And their argument back to Yosef is, no, we're not spies. We're honest people. This is how we understand now to be called a spy is not a compliment. To be called a spy is being told that you're living a double life. And Joseph accused his brothers of spying, while they insisted they were honest. Okay, let's read how the Torah describes what we've called the 12 spies. Shlach lecha noshim, send for yourself men, v'yasuru et eretz Canaan, and they shall scout the land of Canaan. Doesn't say v'yoraglu, they should spy out the lands of Canaan. They should scout the land of Canaan. And throughout the Parshah, we'll notice that the people are often and continues to refer to as scouts, mitayarim, tayar, or if you've heard of Tor, they run these scouts, they go to Tor, Israel, Tor, not T-O-U-R, which is in English, but Tor as in to see the land. Moshe never told the men to act as spies. He instructed them to scout, which is done honestly and openly, exactly as God has commanded. You might call them tourists. That was their job, not to figure out war strategy, not to uncover the weaknesses and the secrets of the land, but just to observe the greatness and the wonders of the land. And that was their mission, not to be meraglim, but to be tayarim, to be scouts. Parshah tayarim inyan chakira v'chipos. Says the Sefer Shirashim, the meaning of a scout is to investigate and to search. And this is why you find, Lebush says, Hashem revealed to him that there would be no need for spies to secretly identify the land's vulnerabilities, for the land would not be conquered by natural means. Any attempt to catch a land by natural means would fail due to the might of its inhabitants. Instead, Hashem intended to capture land supernaturally, just like when we left Egypt. There were no scouts to find out where the Pharaoh's weaknesses are. There was no war. There was no army. There was no need to send spies to uncover the land's vulnerabilities, for nothing could stop Hashem from giving the land to the Jews, no matter how they might enter. Hashem permitted Moshe to send these men because he knew the Jews did not believe in their hearts that it was a land flowing with milk and honey. The wonders of the land is what the Jewish people need to be convinced. Thus, he permitted Moshe to send scouts to see the goodness of the land, not spies to see its nakedness, to see how they could conquer it. And this is where the spies went wrong. There was no need for spying secretly, since the land would be conquered miraculously. Moshe sent scouts only because the people didn't fully believe in its goodness. And that's what happened next. The thought of submitting an evil report did not enter their minds yet. They never thought of ruining the mission. These were holy people. But, however, the potential for the sin was established after committing a subtle deviation, a subtle sin. And they eventually committed a complete sin. What was the subtlety of their sin? They shifted from trust to strategy. We're not only going to be scouts, we are going to do even more than that. We're going to do a spying mission. We're going to come back and also talk about what the best way to conquer the land will be. That's not a problem, unless it's against what Hashem has told it to do, to change. Not alarming in the sense that it's not an emergency. And Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't pull the plug on this mission, but he notices right away. This is not just people thinking on their own 2 feet how to accomplish the mission that was given to them. This is people who are deciding what their mission should be. Key difference. And that's a slippery slope. So they're still righteous people, and they're still people who are determined to do the right thing, but they've stepped out of line. They've stepped into a realm of where it shouldn't be human beings deciding what our mission is. We should use our mind to how best to fulfill Hashem's mission given to us, and continuously checking whether we are on track with what Hashem has told us to do. And it's at this point that Moshe Rabbeinu realizes Yeshua needs a prayer here, because these people have decided not to be scouts, but to be spies. And that change in itself isn't so much a problem, other than the fact that it's deviating from Hashem's plan. Once you do that, that's a big problem. It gets a little deeper. If you don't mind, I'm going to do the rest by heart because I need to get back to the party. But I do want to say the next step is to recognize that these people are messengers of Moshe. Nowadays, we're familiar with the term the Rebbe's Shluchim and the Rebbe's Shluchos, the emissaries, the agents of the Rebbe. And the Rebbe often told us that every single person is an agent and an emissary of Hashem himself. One of the rules of being an agent, the rules of agency, is that as long as we are doing what we were told to do, then every deed that we do is on behalf of and is powered by the strength of the sending agency. So if the Rebbe asks a shliach or a shlucha to do a particular thing, please go to such and such a place and bring Yiddishkeit there, they are working b'koyach hameshaleach, with the power and the energy of their sender, as long as they stay true to what the mission is. And this becomes the deeper problem of deviation. Not only am I no longer doing what I'm supposed to be doing, that also means I no longer have the backing of the enormous force that sent me. Moshe Rabbeinu is emes la'amitoy. Moshe Rabbeinu is truth through and through. And that's why he wouldn't have sent someone to be a meragel, to be double-faced, to be living a cover story. And when they decided to do that, they were disconnecting themselves from the connection to Moshe. And of course, this becomes a red flag. It's not an emergency because they haven't done any avera, they haven't done anything wrong, but the counsel, that eitzah, that idea of where we think we're going to do it better, because to our mind, it makes more sense. But it's a shift and it's a deviation. It's going away from what Hashem has asked us to do. That's not only a slippery slope, it's already a move away from the straight and narrow. And it's at this point that Moshe Rabbeinu says, Yeshua, I'm not going to stop everybody from coming up this mission because they're still righteous people, but notice where this is headed. Notice where this can end up. And of course, the message to us is Hashem has given us a very, very strong mission, a mission that's guaranteed to succeed. And that is that we will be proud Yidden who will be successful in educating an entire world, all of humanity, with goodness and kindness. And the way we're going to do it, for starters, is by being a lighthouse. A lighthouse doesn't travel the world. A lighthouse makes sure that its own light is very, very bright, and it shines strong light. We are going to make sure that we are upright people, joyous people, confident people, people who are connected to Hashem in every part of our life. And that's the first step of how we influence the world. And let me tell you, as a Yiddish people of the past 2,000 years, we have brought to civilization so many real values that have become part of mainstream humanity. The fact that people are ambitious, the fact that people are hopeful, the fact that the world believes that tomorrow could be better than today. And the bad of the past does not have to dictate the future. I mean, that's what drives all of science and all of innovation. The fact that researchers are looking for innovative medication and technology is an assumption that we can make things better. That's a Yiddish value. We didn't get onto pulpits and big marketing campaigns to teach the world this. We just lived by it. And it's rubbed off. Do a little homework, you realize that back in the day, most people didn't believe that they could ever break free from the cycle of what you call the cycle of history. And we now certainly believe that. Yes, the past is an inspiration for the future, but the future is where better things are going to happen. And that faith is a human gift, a Yiddish gift to humanity. And then there's more. And that is that we have a real message to share with the world, a message of value, a message of ethics, of morality that is based on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if someone asks us, oh, it's so nice to see you well behaved, we immediately say yes. We believe in Hashem. We connect the dots. In our own mind, we see it, and we are willing to share with others. The Menschlichkeit, the uprightness, the values that we live by are godly gifts. We should recognize that the fact that we are upright people is because Hashem has taught us how to do that. And we shared that with others, deviating from this mission, making it sound like we're nice because it's nice to be nice. We're nice because it makes us look good. That's not bad, but it's stepping away from our divine mission. And in this week's Sedra, we learn from Moshe, if we commit ourselves to doing the right thing, like Kalev and like Yeshua, we are those ambassadors. We are the ambassadors of goodness to this world, divine goodness. Goodness that is rooted in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's love for us. How do we know He loves us? First of all, He woke us up this morning. Second of all, He gave us the Torah. And He guides us. And He gives us the empowerment. He gives us a purpose to live for. That's the most loving thing He can do for us. And when we recognize that and we live by that, Hashem will give us much hatzlacha, and not just hatzlacha, in the work that we're doing in our personal geula, our personal lives. We'll see real redemption. Redemption means we see Hashem in every part of our life. It's uplifting, it's inspiring, it's joyful, it's peaceful, and Hashem will give us a lot of more hatzlacha and bracha and all the good things we do. Thank you very much, everybody. Mitzvah Hashem, next week, same time, same place. I'm sorry we're ending a little early, but I'm happy that we were able to learn some Torah, and we're wishing everyone lots of simchas. Sei gesund.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.